It's my pleasure to kick us off, officially start, and introduce our first speaker to give opening remarks for our first panel, Jenna Alsaya, Assistant Vice President for Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships at U.S. Telecom, who'll be kicking us off. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Thank you, Judan, and thank you, HTTP, for hosting this summit today to explore how we can work together to build a digital future where everyone can connect and thrive in a modern world. This goal of universal connectivity is central to the core mission of the broadband providers and innovators that U.S. Telecom represents. Over the last 30 years, America's broadband providers have invested over $2 trillion in building network infrastructure to connect families, businesses, and communities throughout the U.S. This investment laid the groundwork that makes everything from online learning and remote work to telemedicine and connected agriculture possible. But there's still work to do to ensure all communities benefit from the power of broadband. We are all here today because technology continues to transform how we live and work on a daily basis. Ensuring reliable internet access and digital readiness is more critical than ever. This next session will explore innovative approaches to expand connectivity and strengthen the digital capacity of communities. Indeed, many of U.S. Telecom's members have taken part in public-private partnerships that have been very effective in expanding the reach of their networks to unserved areas. Federal programs like the American Rescue Plan Act and the Universal Service Fund have been integral to making these partnerships a success. U.S. Telecom members are also stand ready to get to work on projects through BEAD, the BEAD program, once they get the green light. However, there are two other important pieces of the universal connectivity puzzle: affordability and digital literacy. The ACP was a powerful complement to our industry's investments and amplified the longstanding work of community stakeholders that have been working to ensure students, families, and small businesses in underrepresented communities have the tools and resources they need to thrive in our digital economy. U.S. Telecom members were big supporters of this program. They really valued the partnerships they had with local organizations to increase broadband adoption and advance digital literacy in the communities they serve. And we, as an association, are committed to working with policymakers and the community here today to find pathways forward to continue this important work. Now, please join me in welcoming the moderator of our first panel, Brent Wilkes, Senior Vice President for Institutional Development at the Hispanic Federation and HTTP Board Chair.
Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction, and we're super excited to have everyone here today on behalf of the Board of Directors. We believe that broadband access is absolutely essential to the opportunities that families in our community have to be able to learn, to be able to get work, and to be able to compete for opportunity in this new digital economy. And the loss of the ACP program was something that we all were very concerned about. Many of us spent a lot of time going to meet with our members of Congress. I know that I was part of a team that met with over 57 members to explain just how this program is benefiting people within their district and how it was essential for us to lift up opportunity and really how that program pays for itself. And I think folks kind of miss this, but when you provide a child with access to the internet, you're creating a skill set that they'll use for the rest of their lives, especially in today's economy. And the opportunities that they get when they have that skill set are exceptional. In our digital skilling work at Hispanic Federation, we've been able to help people get new workplace opportunities after getting a short a set of courses on digital skilling. And some people have been able to actually triple their salaries after getting a certificate through the program. The average increase is over $10,000. So that's real money in people's pockets. It also means additional tax revenue for the US government over a lifetime. And that more than offsets the cost of a small scale program like the Affordable Connectivity Program. So we lamented the fact that Congress didn't reauthorize the funds. That this impacted 23 million people. And already we've seen a lot of folks have to make some really difficult choices. Some people have kept their connectivity, but they've had to cut back on essential services, food, housing, clothing, things that their family needs. They've had to make sacrifices. Other people have let their internet access lapse. And unfortunately, that's been, especially detrimental. Just wanted to tell a quick story about my son. He's just moved into a new home, and he would not actually make the move into the house until his internet was set up. He wouldn't move physically because that's how important it is to him to be able to access the internet. It's essential for his work. It's essential for everything that he does. So most of us go through life taking internet access for granted. And when a family doesn't have that access, that's a huge loss. And it's a huge impact on that family's opportunities in the future. And so the loss of ACP was devastating for many families. And we haven't even really begun to scratch the surface of how badly this will impact the opportunities for so many people in our communities. But we've seen the evidence already. So what do you do now? How do you move forward? And that's really what this panel is about. We are certainly willing to figure out other ways to try to help increase connectivity and to help people adopt broadband. We are very thankful to many of the partners of HTTP because they do offer low-cost broadband plans even today, even past the end of ACP. And that's really been the lifesaver for many of the families that were on ACP and needed to have a low-cost plan to be able to afford it. But still, there's challenges going forward for these folks. And so we've got a great panel here, and I'm going to introduce everybody and ask them to come up and please take their seats and then introduce themselves. First, let me invite Angelina Panettiere, who's with the National League of Cities. Angelina, please come on up. And we're honored to have Delegate Michelle Lopez Maldonado for the Virginia House of Delegates. Delegate, please come up. And then Kenley Joseph, who's the Tech and Telecom Policy Council at MMTC. Thank you so much, Joseph, for joining us today. Please come on up. I wanted to just ask each of you to introduce yourselves, your name, role, and what brings you to the digital equity conversation, and then kind of provide your perspective on where we are right now in terms of the goals that ACP had and how we can continue to make sure we're connecting people.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Angelina Panettiere. I'm the Legislative Director for Information Technology and Communications at the National League of Cities. NLC, the National League of Cities, is a century-old organization that represents cities, towns, and villages across the country of all sizes. No city is too big and no village is too small. We provide federal advocacy, research, and education and professional development for local elected officials and city staff. And in terms of what brings us into this conversation, this is something that has been very important to local leaders for a long time. I think for those who did not get how critical this was, the pandemic really made it very clear. In 2022, we published our Digital Equity Playbook that provided some interactive resources for local officials to really get their hands around what the digital divide looked like in their community, what sorts of problems their residents are facing, and to start thinking about what the right solution might be for them. Because one of the things that we really try to bring home for people is that the solution to the digital divide in any community is going to be as unique as that community. There is no one solution that is going to fit every community, every neighborhood, every family's situation is different. And we really think that local officials are the ones who are best connected on a block by block basis to understand what the people in their community need and how they can bring them what they need in terms of affordability, in terms of access, in terms of skill development. And then I think just to frame up the conversation today, I think what we're really focused on now is dealing with uncertainty. I think in a post-ACP world, in a world with a lot of budgetary uncertainty at every level of government, we have to start thinking creatively because while, yes, I do hope that we can get ACP reauthorized and funded, we have to do something in the meantime. We can't just sit on our hands. And so I'm looking forward to the conversation about what we do.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Lopez Maldonado, and I have the pleasure of serving in our Virginia General Assembly. And I serve as the policy chair for our Latino caucus, the digital equity lead for the Black caucus, and I'm founding chair of our technology and innovation caucus. I say all that to say because that's what a recovering tech lawyer does when they run for office, is they find places to be in tech. The issues that are before us now are near and dear to my heart, and we have seen the marginalization, the minimization, and the lack of access for communities, not just in sort of urban, ex-urban areas, but also our rural communities. And Virginia has all of those, just like many other states. And it is imperative that we navigate these uncertain times with eyes wide open. We need I'm fond of saying this expression, this is an all hands on deck moment where we need government, private sector, civil society, all kinds of advocates to make sure that we are providing access, that we are making it affordable, because it doesn't just impact our ability to work, it impacts our ability to educate and learn. It impacts our ability to provide quality health care and benefits and services and so much more. And where we're looking at lack of funding, particularly with BEAD or other programs, or whether it's the proposed moratorium that puts a ban on states being able to enforce AI regulation and legislation, all of it is very much connected and very much connected to our data, our equity, and our privacy.
Good morning, folks. My name is Ken Lee Joseph. I am the Tech and Telecom Policy Counsel over at MMTC, which is the Multicultural Media, Telecom, and Internet Council. It's definitely a mouthful. We have been around for about 40 years, and we have been focused on making sure that our communities have access to broadband, have knowledge, have the means to be able to participate in an increasingly digital society. Closing the digital divide has been a focus of ours for some time now. And that goal becomes increasingly important as the years progress and as technology and the internet access becomes more ubiquitous and necessary. We have been advocating for the inclusion and education of our communities for the entirety of our existence. And so the developments in recent times that have made things as uncertain as they are have made it even more important for communities like ours and individuals like us who are focused on making sure that folks who don't have access get access important. So looking forward to the conversation, and I appreciate being here today to talk to you folks.
Well, thank you. So we got an excellent panel today, and we were talking earlier about how to start off this session, and the thing that jumped out right at us is just how much the landscape is changing, kind of like underneath our feet. It wasn't too long ago that we were celebrating the infrastructure bill, which made a historic investment in broadband adoption, both with the Broadband Equity and Deployment Program, the BEAD program, but also with the Digital Equity Act. This was a goal to make sure that everyone had the wires connecting their homes, so they had the opportunity to adopt broadband, and then also to make sure that people who had that opportunity learned about the importance of doing so, got help connecting, got help with learning to navigate the internet, and learning the skill sets that they would need to be successful in the future. So we were super excited about these initiatives. Really, it's a historic commitment that was made by Congress. And just as I was kind of getting all excited to implement part of the Digital Equity Act at Hispanic Federation, we got a letter from the Department of Commerce saying that they were terminating the program completely. Every single grant that had been awarded under the program would go, and they weren't just stopping there. They were saying that the states also would have their grants terminated. So both the federal competitive grant program as well as the state level, $2.4 billion worth of effort to try to connect families was gone. And so I was still reeling about that. And then we just recently got word of new guidelines for BEAD, updating guidance from the administration, which has huge implications for how that program is going to be rolled out, as well as, of course, in the budget negotiations, there's efforts to, talk about AI and prohibit states from implementing their AI regulations. So, as well as many other things. So we thought the best way perhaps to start off the discussion this morning was just to talk a bit about how this changing landscape is evolving, how you see it impacting the communities that you represent, and what it is that we can do to try to move forward.
So this is the, I think, a great foundational question. It's almost like the $64,000 question is what do we do? We've never been in quite a place where technologically we've had so much upheaval and uncertainty. And so a couple of things with the budgetary concerns. Some of you may very well know that the House Energy and Commerce Committee slipped in some language in the budget that would place a 10-year moratorium on state enforcement of AI legislation and regulation. And that has caused some great concern because right now, historically, the states have been the one to create the privacy protection laws and other data sort of guidelines, and to completely preempt them from what this means is when it comes to something like broadband connection or data centers or healthcare, all those things, when you look at the evolving role and the evolving technological nature of artificial intelligence and surrounding components, they will be integrated. And so how do we protect our people while we're providing access, while we're encouraging the flourishing of technology and innovation? We have a lot of interests, and some of them feel competing, but we must balance them. As I tell people all the time, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And this is a place where we must do that. We must balance the need for innovation with our duty to protect people, data, and privacy. The other piece is what happens at the federal level and how that impacts us at the state and local levels. I won't go so much into local because I think my friend over here can do that with much more mastery. But I will say that the states sit in between the local and the federal. And a lot of our budgetary allocations are connected to federal allocations. And so we are also in this very difficult, uncertain time trying to figure out how do we provide the services needed for broadband under our VATI program, which is Virginia Technology Initiative, which helps to connect that last mile because it's connected to the BEAD program. So there's all this uncertainty that is really interconnected with all the things we do that we have to make sure we're pushing the needle forward, and hopefully we will be able to get some of those answers soon.
Well, and I think you teed me up perfectly because one way to think about this is when there is policy uncertainty or budgetary uncertainty, if states catch a cold, local governments get the flu. So all of these sort of questions that are still up in the air, what the reconciliation package is going to look like, what policy provisions are going to be in it, what next year's federal appropriations are going to look like, that has a trickle-down effect that increases its impact as you move down the levels of government. So as states are trying to figure out their budgets, reassess their broadband plans, look at what they're going to be doing over the next year and a half, that also means that local governments are trying to figure out how much money they're going to have, what the state is going to be able to provide their community, what is going to get cut, what is going to get prioritized. And so it's very difficult to plan in that environment. And then, of course, that has a ripple effect for, for civil society, for private industry. There's more questions than we have answers right now. But I think there are some things that haven't changed. I think a lot of the basic things that we should all be doing remain the same. I think even though there's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers, the advice that I keep giving people is to talk to each other, to talk to their governors, to talk to their broadband offices, to talk to their legislators, to tell them what's going on, to talk to the providers in their region and their state and their community, to talk about what is possible and figure out where the gaps are and start prioritizing so that as we're beginning to react to some of these uncertainties, as we start to get more information, as we start to get some solidification around policy changes, we can react accordingly.
I just wanted to mention one thing to draw a very clear connection between the AI moratorium language and BEAD. So now that it's over, the language is over in the Senate, The proposal is, okay, if we can't get it through the way we wanted to in the House, here's what we're going to do in the Senate. And the proposal now is to force states to choose between accepting BEAD money or being able to enforce AI regulation and legislation, which is a horrible sort of pitting against interests and the protection of people. So if states want to continue enforcing their privacy laws, doing the deep fakes and all the things, they will be ineligible if this legislation were to pass to receive BEAD funding. So we have a real problem on our hands at the moment.
So yes, the key word of the day is uncertainty throughout all of government. And so for us, one of the best things we can do in a situation like this is just to make sure we educate our people. So that includes things like what we're doing in the Juneteenth national Juneteenth Digital Opportunity Bible Study, which we are doing on Juneteenth. We at MMTC launched the Black Churches for Digital Equity back in 2021, and that has been a mechanism or a vehicle that we've used to reach out to the community. It includes over 50 churches across 13 states and regions. And so the goal there is to reach down to the anchor institutions that are in the communities of the people that we serve to ensure that they have the education and the awareness of what's going on and training. And so along those lines, we are on the 19th going to be focusing on AI and making sure that folks have digital skills training, have some workforce training, because as I believe some of you may have heard, AI is impacting jobs already. I think there was a study that said that there's been a 25 to 50% drop in entry-level positions because of AI, and that's only going to continue. And so in the whirlwind of uncertainty, the best thing you can do is to educate yourself to make sure that you're as knowledgeable as possible to take advantage of the opportunities that are present, whether that be BEAD funding that comes down or some revival of the ACP program. We will be very vigilant to make sure that we're aware of those so that we can communicate those to our people so they can make use of whatever the calm after the storm looks like.
Yeah, Joseph, that churches program is an amazing program that MMTC is doing. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Reaching a lot of people and spreading the good word to a lot of folks. So that's definitely exciting about the Juneteenth event as well. So I do want to kind of talk a little bit about what you just alluded to, which is this. What do we do now, right? Let's just say that it is what it is, right? In terms of the legislative landscape, how do we ensure that our communities are really still able to move forward, still get that access, still get the training, still get the opportunities that we know are so important and critical? I mean, we talked about AI. If AI really is going to be changing the workforce landscape, which it appears to do, right? We have to make sure that folks have the skill set that they're going to need to be able to utilize AI. There's going to be dislocation. We all know that's coming. So if there's dislocation, there has to be opportunity to help the folks that are dislocated get new job opportunities within this tech landscape. So any thoughts about what we can do to move forward out of ACP?
Sure, I'll start. So first, I would say I think we do need to keep the legislative piece on the radar. Anyone who worked on the emergency broadband benefit or ACP knows that we lobbied for years and years and years and years before that happened. And things tend to move very slowly until they move very quickly and all at once. And so I think it's really important that we don't let this fall off the radar of Congress. It's important that we keep talking about the impact that ACP had and the gap that it's left behind. That all being said, I think one of the things that we as a community can start to do better is make the business case for both public and private investment in ways that we maybe haven't thought of traditionally. And I loved what you said about the outsized economic impact that ACP ultimately has, because it's not just the immediate impact for that household or that provider during those months. It is a large ripple effect throughout society as families and children are able to more fully participate in society, in the economy. And so I think what we're seeing is a lot of really creative collaboration between the public and private sector, in the absence of really cohesive, sustainable funding, looking at ways to thread that needle, looking at ways to come to maybe informal agreements where we don't have formal programs. I think the fact that so many ISPs now offer low-income programs, part of that was a discussion with various levels of government, and part of that was a response to demand and to the bully pulpit and to conversations that were had between the public and private sector. And I think those can really pay off. And I think it's helpful to remember that we are not resourceless. We are being asked to do a lot more with a lot less, but we can still do something. And I think things like empowering churches, empowering libraries, empowering healthcare providers to start connecting dots for people and give them the capacity to advocate for these things, to locate those existing low-income programs, to get creative about how they're connecting is an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that takes a horizontal approach. And it also allows people to sort of assume their own autonomy and power that they have at the local level when it feels like we are powerless. Two data points I will say, many of you may have heard recently that the CEO of OpenAI made this huge sweeping statement that made news about a week ago, saying that people better wake up because AI is going to take a very, very large percentage of entry-level jobs. And data from research has said that by 2030 worldwide, there'll be like 86 million jobs lost to AI, but 90-something million gained. So there was about a $12 million net growth. The question we have to ask ourselves, though, in what types of jobs? So the CEO of OpenAI talked about white-collar jobs, but also entry-level. And we always know people say that's an alarmist view, but what I encourage people to remember historically in our country, think about the auto manufacturing industry where people thought automation wasn't going to replace jobs. And on the assembly line, we have a lot of robotics now. So people were displaced, but some people were upskilled and positioned elsewhere. But I think it's disingenuous to pretend that it's not going to happen. So we have to prepare with eyes wide open. And I think one of the ways that we do that is to look at workforce development programs that are not only come from funding from the state levels, but they are really, really created in sort of the arc of the educational journey in the K-12 to higher ed. And there are programs that can be done in partnership with the private sector. Amazon is a very good example of how they do that work across different academic settings and communities, regardless of how you may feel about some of the work they do in the tech space. And so I think we need to really look at the workforce and development upskilling, and we need to make credentialing and courses and certifications very viable for people because we've got digital natives in Gen Z and even our younger millennials period, because I still remember when we got home computers, but don't hold that against me. So I think those are some of the places that could add to yours. And over to you, kind sir.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments. Again, it's all about making sure that the people who are most impacted are aware of what their options are, because you don't want to feel like the world is passing you by when, again, today, to be a productive member of society, you need access to the internet. And in order to be engaged in the AI revolution, you can't do so without internet access. And so it's going to be for us continuing to advocate for programs like the ACP. Even though they're now defunct, we want to do what we can to bring them back. And while we're doing the advocacy on the Hill and at the FCC and wherever else, we want to make sure that we're talking to the actual people. Again, on June 19th, we're going to have some workforce development stuff to make sure that folks are aware of what their options are. Because again, it's things are moving fast. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so in my mind, the best thing for individuals to do is focus on themselves, how they can grow, how they can learn. And that also includes connecting with the people and organizations around you. So it's not focusing on yourself does not mean being by yourself. you can connect with others in order to grow and develop and find some autonomy in uncertain and chaotic times.
These are all excellent points. And, one of the things I hear is that there are going to be huge changes, right? That we know, we can see this coming. It's happening fast, but we do have time to prepare. And what I'm worried about is like who is taking the lead at this juncture. It doesn't feel like the federal government at the moment is too focused on preparing our workforce for the next iteration of our economy that's going to be dominated with AI and other tech-oriented initiatives. So if they're stepping back, are the state and local governments prepared to kind of step up and take on this challenge? Is it too much for them to ask, especially with their own budgets being impacted by some of the federal cuts? So can you kind of give us a little sense of the lay of the land? Is our local and state governments ready to step in and really support, or is it more private sector partnerships and the nonprofit sector that has to fill in the gap? What's your thoughts in terms of who's going to take the lead in addressing these challenges?
I actually think this is an all of the above approach. But what I will say is there are incredible legislators at the federal level who are trying to move these kinds of efforts forward. But because of the dysfunction, the inability to be able to get things passed is something that's playing out on our TVs and phones and tablets all across the world, not just the nation. So I want to say that it's not that we don't have people who are trying to at least hold the line, advance the line. We're just not being able to make much progress. But we have a number of things that are in draft form that hopefully over time will make its way across the finish line. In terms of states, I do think that states have historically always played a role in this. This is because the federal government hasn't. So states have stepped up in major ways over the last several years. In fact, Virginia was the second state in the nation to have a Data Privacy Protection Act. I personally passed Online Child Data Privacy Act last year, and we have folks across the nation, like in New Hampshire with Monica Priestley, James Maroney in Connecticut, Senator Campriglione in Texas, and many people across the country really trying across party lines to be able to advance this work in a bipartisan way. And so states have been forced, they've been intersecting across party lines on this, and there still is disagreement on many pieces, but there is a lot that there's overlap. I was just on a panel last week with Senator Campriglione out of Texas, who just passed a bill, a comprehensive sort of state government AI bill. And there were so many things that we agreed on. We both sit on a national workforce group, task force for AI and stuff. And so I think the states have to continue doing the work, but we cannot do it alone. If the federal funding is in question and a lot of our budget is dependent upon those matching dollars, then we have a problem. We have no choice but to lean into partnerships and collaborations with private sector, with other folks in the public sector, with civil society, with labor, all of those things. It's critically important. And then, of course, we need to be in partnership with our localities, because that is the heartbeat. That is, the further away you get from the locals, the more disconnected you are from what is happening on the ground. That is the heartbeat. And so the states really need to be reaching across and reaching down to make sure that we fill those gaps.
Well, I don't want to repeat anything that Delegate Maldonado said because I agree with all of it. So I will give a weasel answer, which is that it really depends. And I think some communities are in a better position to step up and take the lead here than others. But what I said earlier about the solution being unique to every community really does hold here as well. I think in some regions, in some cities, we have seen nonprofits form or step up and really take the lead here for that area. We're seeing models that can scale, that can be replicated in other places. We're seeing universities step up and really engage with their communities, library systems, school systems. So I think it really depends on where you are and the dynamics in that state and that region and the resources that are available. But bottom line, I don't think we do have enough resources. I think we are going to see a lot of entities that are not able to do as much as they would like to, that aren't going to have the capacity to work on issues like this because they are dealing with a lot of other challenges. And that's why it's just so important for us to keep underscoring the absolute necessity of a strong, reliable federal partner and a sustainable program like ACP to underpin the whole thing.
Again, I agree with my co-panelists. There's a lot of talk about a whole of government approach to addressing large issues. And this is one of the issues that's a whole of society approach. Like everybody needs to be involved on every level, from the churches that we work with, to the libraries, to the states, localities, the feds. Everybody needs to be involved, especially with issues like AI as well, which is a whole, like the entire world needs to be paying attention to what's going to be happening with AI. And so it doesn't make sense for anybody to be in a silo. At the same time, folks need to be working first on the ground and then reaching out across to make sure that everybody's involved. It's a whole of society situation.
So speaking of AI, we often talk about some of the civil rights concerns that everyone has about it, or perhaps the impact on job markets. But can it also be part of the solution somehow? Can we harness AI to actually help with this task of helping folks gain digital skill sets and to be successful in this new economy? Can the AI be part of the answer to the challenges that we've got now with like declining, revenue opportunities and everybody feeling the pressure of trying to provide opportunity for folks? I'm curious because we often talk about some of the negatives. Are there some positive opportunities that AI presents?
Sure. Yes, is the short answer. I actually have a column called The Black AI Optimist that we publish on a somewhat quarterly basis, because I do believe that as much as there are concerns that are very real and legitimate, the reality is AI is here. And it is best to focus our energy on making the most of it and making it productive, as opposed to talking about how problematic it's going to be to the point where you're standing in the way and end up getting run over. And so I do believe that it's going to be integral in finding progress and even helping society at large. Like, it is a tool like anything else, and it's going to be able to help, I think, compress the time horizon that a lot of the developments that we are looking to make, from healthcare to I think societal issues like segregation and racism, even all that stuff, I believe is in the wheelhouse of what can be improved when properly applied. And so, yes, I think the issues that we face, the challenges that we are currently trying to figure out, AI is going to play a very important role in helping us move forward.
So I am such a geek nerd about this. I am super excited because, yes, I think there are so many things that AI can do that is amazing and innovative and keeps us competitive, not only locally, or across the nation, but globally. And I'll share two quick examples. So here's an example, and then the shadow side, right? This is why we have to have guardrails. So one of our former congresswomen, Jennifer Wexton, has a terminal disease, which is heartbreaking. And part of the progression of that condition is that she loses her ability to talk. And AI was able to capture her voice so that she can now still speak, and it sounds like her, because it is trained on her voice. And now when she uses the technology to speak, it sounds like her instead of some computerized model. That's an amazing thing. These advances in healthcare and services and diagnostics, these are amazing things that are going to help humanity. Now, the shadow side of that is what we all saw, I think last year, when the same technology was used to sample the voice of Joe Biden, and in New England sent robocalls to tell people not to vote. So I think that there is always going to be the risk that bad actors are going to do bad things with technology just as they do now. But because AI is so powerful and is evolving so quickly, and it is learning things that we did not ask it to learn, it is imperative that we are in there simultaneously innovating, protecting, and providing guardrails so that it is responsibly and ethically evolving for humanity.
And the only thing I would add to that, I'm going to be the token just optimist here for once, is that I think AI really has its strength in increasing capacity and providing a potential for equalization. One of the use cases that I am most excited about that I do think is directly relevant to closing the digital divide is increasing the capacity of government to provide services to residents, to their community, to sort of turbocharge their ability to get things done. And especially for small communities that have very small staffs, that have limited resources, the ability to begin incorporating some of these AI-powered tools into things like their constituent services, into things like data analysis that they would not have been able to do before, into things like the permitting process. Nobody enjoys the permitting process, and anything that we can do to facilitate that, to make it smoother and faster and more efficient, is only going to help. And I think our small communities in particular are most excited about that opportunity because they have historically been the ones who have been left behind. And this is really a chance for them to get capacity that they never would otherwise. So that's where I really see the potential, is around data analysis, around better understanding the problems we're facing, and then using it to build capacity where we wouldn't have had it otherwise, and really get the most out of the resources we do have.
Those are all great suggestions. So I would like to close the panel with asking each of you to talk about, one policy idea or strategy shift that could really help continue the efforts at digital inclusion, that were impacted by the loss of ACP. So now that we don't have it, can you give us one thing that we should try to do, whether it's a policy idea or a strategic shift, so that we can, try to advance the ball further?
Sure, I'll start and I'll cheat. I have two answers. One's real short though. We need to keep talking about universal service fund reform. Now is not its moment, but I do think that the bipartisan working group on the Hill made a lot of progress. I was very, very pleased by the conversations that were being had. I think there's a lot of bipartisan agreement. And yes, the devil is in the details, but I think this is a solvable problem. And I think the will is there, and we just have to keep creating the political force for it. And the only way we do that is by continuing to make it an issue. But the other thing that I would say for everybody in this room and who's listening is that we have to change the way that we talk about this. And I realize everyone here has technology in their title somewhere, but I think we have to stop talking about it as a technology thing. I think we have to start talking about the problems that we are trying to solve. This is not a technology issue. This is an education issue. This is not a technology issue. This is a workforce development issue. This is not a technology issue. It's a public safety issue. It's a national security issue. It's an education issue. It's a business and economic development issue. Because ultimately, most people, whether they are elected officials or anybody else, are going about their lives thinking about other stuff. And they want to solve the problems that are relevant to them. And so we have to start talking about technology and broadband access and digital literacy and digital inclusion in ways that are less about the digital and the technology and more about the problems that people are trying to solve, because that is ultimately what is going to get it embedded into programs on a sustainable basis, what's going to get people motivated to do something.
So I'm just going to +1 that because I believe what you're talking about is making it so that people understand it's a kitchen table topic. It's a kitchen table issue that affects us every day. It's a horizontal. So I will then add from a more administrative kind of technical piece, I think the state legislatures if, as we're watching what happens with federal funding, perhaps if we're losing some of that, maybe at the state level, what we could do is provide some incentives for people, whether they're tax incentives for companies to be able to continue providing this service to fill in the gaps, because it's going to be costly and it's not quite fair and balanced. I'm a big pay your fair share kind of girl, and I believe that may not be appropriate to expect our private sector to shoulder the burden of this. This really does have to be a true partnership. So perhaps one of the ways we can ease some of the pressure, if we're finding that when we get back into session next year and have to create our new budget, that maybe we can find some incentive ways to help facilitate the forward movement.
So one idea that is far from fleshed out completely, but I've been playing with, is potentially having a digital equity fund included when there are spectrum auctions, so that a portion of the funds from the auction are set aside for digital equity initiatives, and the rest goes to the Treasury, as is typical with an auction. And I feel as though over the years, as technology advances, even though spectrum is a finite resource, there's a chance that technology allows more use of different bands over time. And so once the Spectrum Auction Authority gets reinstated officially, and auctions happen on a more regular basis, there could potentially be a mechanism to continue to fund a digital equity focus from the federal government.
Excellent thoughts. I will say that spectrum auction money has always been hotly debated on what to do with it. So you're gonna have to fight for that, I think. But I'll be there with you. I'll fight with you because I think that's the right use of it. But I do want to thank the panel. You guys have been amazing. I really have to say that I kind of get depressed sometimes when I see what's happening and some of the challenges that we have. But to know that we've got advocates like you fighting to make things better, both at the local level and the state level, and of course, fighting at the national level as well, is really inspiring and makes me feel confident again that we will end up prevailing and making sure our communities get the support that they need to be able to navigate this really challenging time. So thank you so much for your wonderful words and appreciate you being here and joining us today. And can the audience give a big round of applause? Thank you.